Hey, Sophie. Hey, Erin. Welcome to the Scale Up Summit.
Hi, how's it
Hi.
going?
So excited to have you in today. I think our conversation is going to really resonate with so many people who are here for the summit this week. And I want to kick it off by reading your bio and then get right into conversation with you both, because I know we have a lot to cover. So, this is Sophie and Erin Atkinson. They are marriage success coaches and authors dedicated to helping couples build fulfilling, lasting relationships. As a husband and wife coaching team, they specialize in guiding married couples to develop their unique couple identity, fostering a marriage that is both deeply satisfying and resilient. And I'm so excited to talk to you both because not only are you marriage success coaches, but you're also entrepreneurs. So, you really, really get what it takes to have that lasting bond while also navigating the ups and downs of being a business owner. So I'm so excited to dive in. We're talking about that marriage itself isn't actually complicated. It's the people that are, which
Exactly.
makes perfect sense. So why don't you share with us a little bit about how I'd love to hear just how the two of you found this work as marriage success coaches. I think that would be really interesting to kick it off with.
Yeah,
Wanna start us off?
sure. Um, so Aaron and I have both experienced obviously being married, but we've also have experienced divorce. And, anyone that have gone through that process know that it can be very difficult to navigate. Um, and considering the statistics with how high the divorce rate is, not just when you get married for the first time, but it increases approximately maybe 10% more. So it's about maybe 70% a failure rate of expectancy for a divorce for your second time of marriage. So with that being said, considering we've experienced having being divorced before, we wanted to come up with a program that will be able to assist those that are in second marriages, professionals that are in second marriages, and how they can navigate all of the busyness and all the things that you go through, with being either an entrepreneur or a professional out there in the world, and also being married, so that they won't make or have to experience the same things that we've experienced. So we're really passionate about trying to, put a dent in that number, trying to increase it a little bit, and making more successful marriages.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you have to realize is that the one thing that none of us are ever taught is how to be in a relationship, right? So it's like we see relationships, we see people in relationships, our parents, our cousins, our family members, and we kind of just end up in a space where it's like, okay, I like this person likes me, let's go on this journey together, right? And so we feel like as professionals who have worked in our careers to advance, that we understand that there's a lot of things that we can learn, even as business professionals. There's always some tools that you can learn to make you more effective at the things you do. And so it was important for us to look at our relationship and then look at what we've learned in our relationship to say, guess what? If we could do something to improve people's connection, and we could do something to make sure that people can also learn these kinds of techniques in their interpersonal relationships, then it will improve everything they touch. And that's kind of what's important to Sophie and I.
That's so true, right? Like, this is such a foundational, fundamental thing that so many of us are craving in our lives. And we're given like zero guidance about how to make it work, this cornerstone relationship of our lives. And I love that the two of you are channeling what, were negative experiences for you, but into something that is going to help so many people moving forward to not have to fall into that.
Yeah.
So, something that I found really interesting is you were saying so many couples focus on trying to fix their relationship dynamics, when they're really overlooking the root cause. So talk a little bit about what are those root causes? What should we be looking at instead of just trying to fix the relationship dynamic?
I there's a few things here. What Aaron and I have created are three things that we notice that if you incorporate into the process of how you go through your marriage together, one is awareness. That is extremely important, to be aware, self-aware, and just aware of, what's going on around you, right? To try to be preventative. Actions. Once you're aware, what are you going to do with that? Take action. What is that action going to be? How are you going to, navigate that or decide, which route you should take, or, making that decision together. And then coming into some kind of alignment, right? So you have awareness, action, and alignment. And that's the goal, to get both people on the same page so that they can stay in alignment throughout their journey, because you're going to grow, you're going to change. People think when you've been in relationships or been in a marriage for say 20, 30 years, you know everything you need to know about your partner. That's not necessarily true. You may know, a lot of the the things that people do or your spouse do that is normal or consistent, throughout, I don't know, that they have a quirk about this or whatever it is that they do. But what they don't realize is, as the person is growing, they're changing, their interests change. So with that being said, there's going to be something that you're going to need to continue to be curious about and continue to learn about your partner. And you may have a question, you may have a conversation with maybe another couple or some friends, and it could be something random. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I never knew you experienced that in high school, or I never knew you didn't like this thing. Why didn't I know that? It's been 30 years. Well, you might not know every single thing. And another important thing is, there is a difference, between men and women. And I think when we can respect what those things are, we won't try to get that person, to change and be and think how that other person thinks, because as a woman, I'm going to think of things a little differently than my husband as a man would think. So if we could kind of respect those, I guess, boundaries and learn how to navigate through that, then we could be better communicators and have a better journey.
Yeah, because I was thinking one of the things that we did learn early on when it comes to like getting close to someone is when you're on this life journey, the conversations and open-ended questions you should be asking your partner should in return have them speak a whole paragraph of information back to you rather than just a few sentences, because the depths of us is consistently changing. We go out in the world, we're interacting with other people, we're having different experiences, and when we bring those back to our personal space, it's important that we share those things, and we continue to share those things because these types of experiences are going to shape who we are. And if we work to stay connected with each other and share these things and share on this journey, we think that it makes stronger relationship bonds.
Yes, that makes so much sense. I mean, my husband and we met when we were 18 and 19. And so it's been 20 years now. And we've always, prioritized communication, but, any moments of tension, it was because one of us or both of us were growing and shifting and changing. And maybe we were a little scared to share that with the other one, or we didn't quite know how to, share that piece of ourselves. But we are radically different people than we were when we met in college, going out drinking at frat parties every weekend, right? Like, we are such different people, and we've found so many other things that are so deeply fulfilling than when we were just kids. But had we not kept choosing communication and to share those pieces that were shifting within us, I know, like, there's no way we could still be on the same page after all this time. So I can understand just from my own journey how important that is. So you mentioned, Sophie, about, the difference, the way, women approach things or think about things and men. Can you talk a little bit more about that, or even in your own relationship dynamic, like what that looks like for the two of you, or what you've noticed consistently with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a huge thing because, you know, we're different people individually. Rather, it doesn't matter if you're female or male, you're different, right? No one is like you in the world. However, there's another side to it where, as a woman, we have a different like the nurturing side, and we care so much about certain things that maybe some men don't really care as much about. We may think of things, in a way where, let me give you an example. And this is a big one. A lot of times women they'll have something that they want to say, and the husband may have gotten them a little bit upset or a little annoyed about something, and they don't share it. So they have it inside, and then their husband will notice right away and say, honey, what's wrong? Are you okay? And then you're like, nope, I'm fine. And he's like, no, tell me, like, is everything okay? You want to talk about it? Nope, I'm fine. And you almost have to ask for maybe even 5 times before she shares. And if he says, oh, okay, I'll respect that, and then walk away, then you get mad because they don't, they didn't continue to ask, right? I think that's a funny example anyway, of what we do now. What's important to understand is, on a man's side, if you tell them something, they're going to take what you say for what it is. If you tell them you're okay, they're going to say, okay, you're okay. If you're not okay, you need to say something. But then there's another part of it where if you feel upset and you need to share it, but then he needs a moment, or vice versa, then you have to give them that moment. Maybe it should be shared at that time because it's either too heated or you need a little space. Take a little woosah, take a break, come back, revisit it so that you can talk about it in a way where it's not going to continue to add fuel to the fire. Those are just a couple of examples. I have a slew of others.
So relatable, and it's so true. And as you were saying that, I'm like, I know I've done that. Like, where you're like, I want you to do the work of pulling this out of me. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's a power dynamic or what I think I'm accomplishing, but no, I've definitely played that card. But I also would love to hear from you a little bit about unspoken expectations. I think, sometimes we fall into patterns and habits and even the stuff we do around the house, and we then come to expect our partner to show up in a certain way or to do certain things. Can you talk to me about unspoken expectations, what they do to a relationship, if they're good, if they're bad, your take on it?
Yeah, so for us, like we don't love expectations in general. We think that what couples really should work towards is having certain requirements. Like there are certain things you require in your relationship, because what you have laced in expectation is a certain result, and that result is outside of your control most often because it's also based on something you haven't communicated that you want from your partner. For instance, sometimes, when it comes to couples and they're doing things around the house, and maybe you would love if your partner would help you more in this area, but you don't tell them. You just maybe overdo the thing you're doing. You're let's just say you're doing dishes, you put them in the dishwasher, and you're just putting them in there a little louder than normal, right? So you expect that if they're going to hear you doing this thing, they're going to immediately come down and they're going to help. Well, you don't know what your partner's doing and what's in their mind and their head, but this is an area where you haven't communicated what this is. And we do this so often. It could be something as simple as, for instance, Valentine's Day. We just had Valentine's Day, right? There are many times when people would love for these things to happen. And rather than communicate, hey, honey, I would love flowers, I would like chocolate, and I would like us to go out to eat somewhere nice. People don't say anything, but they expect that their partner is going to read their minds and they're going to know exactly what they wanted, because you know me, right? I know you better than anyone knows you, right? So I should know what's in her head. But the reality is, if she communicates to me and tells me what she wants, especially for men, this is what women have to understand. For men, it's like women are typically vocal communicators. So sometimes for Sophie, in order for her to work something out, it's vocal. The whole process is vocal. She's thinking as she's talking, right? And for me, it isn't that. Like I need to kind of go within and process my thoughts and like work through things. And so we men need more information a lot of times in order for us to act. Because one of the things most husbands don't want to do is we don't want to disappoint our wives. But we also would like to know what to do sometimes, right? Because we don't want to not do the right thing. And so I think that when it comes to expectations, it's important that couples, use these as communication opportunities. And we have many little exercises that we have in our program where we really make people very intentional about communicating. Like, guess what? You're going to communicate this task as a story. And you're going to communicate this task as a story that's someone that's not you to your husband. And then you guys are going to talk about how that relates to you. Because it gives people another way to kind of look outside of themselves. Because anytime we can get couples to think outside of themselves, it's much easier for them to solve the issues that they may be facing in their relationships.
That makes so much sense. And so to play devil's advocate just for a moment, because I can also see the woman then saying, but like, that mental load, right? Of like, well, I want him to want to do these things. I want him to know these things. And if I have to tell him these things, that feels like more work for me. So how do you find the balance in that dynamic?
So what I would say is like, I get you want, the spontaneous things to happen, right? But I would say if you can give your husbands ideas, right? Like for us, we watch a lot of romance and love movies and things like that. And we talk about them, right? And so if you communicate to him like, oh, I would love it if someone did this, or I would love it if these kinds of things. I would love it if you did these things, it would be really nice. And then you guys talk about it so that he has in his mind all these things and these ideas. It will be helpful because for some men, maybe they've never really been romantic or they haven't been spontaneous. But if you give them some information, and we do this with our couples too, of like making sure people make these lists. These are some lists of like, if in a perfect world, if my spouse could whisk me away for these 10 amazing things, these are 10 amazing things they could do. And I think that, if we had like these type of things for people to draw from, it would help the husbands or the wives. And sometimes it's opposite, where sometimes the wives are maybe less spontaneous or romantic in the relationship, and you have husbands that would like that more. But for us, really, what it comes down to is communication. Communication is so important. And when it breaks down in many ways, it leads to a lot of problems. So.
And I will also add too, that goes back to the difference between men and women. It just goes back to it. Once you understand that, then you won't, you won't think to yourself, well, I just want him to know. Or if he doesn't do it, then maybe it's because he doesn't want to, and I don't want him to do something he doesn't want to. Whereas men are pretty simple. If you just tell them what you want, it's just that simple.
Why do we overcomplicate it, right? Actually, though, in my relationship, I do have to say my husband is the one who's like very romantic and thoughtful, and I'm the one who gets in trouble for not being like on top of it.
That happens.
Yeah, so I have to say I'm spoiled, and then he gets a little pissed off sometimes. If not returned, I'm like, well, I'm the girl, so. But that's one of those things, right? Like, but he's communicated that to me. So now I know, and we've had, we've made the lists and all the things. So I'm like, oh, okay, now I know how you're needing me to show up because I'm not showing up in a way that's filling you up, right? And that's ultimately we're partners, and I don't want to be in a partnership where he feels depleted or taken advantage of, or like he's putting in more than he's getting out, right? And so again, as you both said so many times, right, the communication piece is huge. Yeah. So I know we've got a little bit of time left. I'd love to delve into this idea of transforming our unhelpful habits into helpful ones. What are some things that you've helped your clients shift where they came in doing this, not working, and then migrated over to a habit or to a pattern that is more helpful?
Yeah, I think like one of the big things we talked, at least what we talked about today, is like communicating, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the important thing, communication is great, and some couples actually do a good job of communicating, but what they don't do is use I statements. And so a lot of times when you're in critique and you're trying to make a point or get someone to understand a behavior, rather than saying, I felt unseen when you did this, and this, what people say is, you did this, you made me feel this way, you, and so it's attacking. And then once you're attacking someone, then they're in the defensive stance. And once people start defending, they stop listening. And so one of the things that we teach couples a lot is just the appropriate way of using I statements, because that, to me, that's one of the most helpful habits you can have. Yes. Is using I statements, so that what you're really communicating is what your feelings are and how this situation is making you feel. And basically it takes it away from you attacking someone. And then if they love you, they care for you, they don't want to hurt you. They don't want to make you feel this way. And then it also makes a better connection, because now they're like, well, my actions caused this. My actions made you feel this way. And it gives you it's a much better conflict resolution way of being in your relationship. So.
And this is where awareness comes back into play. Helpful, unhelpful, being aware. Your person shouldn't always have to tell you, right? You should also be aware, of what could potentially be going on. Self-check yourself, and then communicate.
That makes so much sense, right? Because you want to check yourself first before you just put it on them of like, you're making me feel this way, you did this. But really, and I think that was one of the big things I noticed in my own relationship going into it when I was so young to where I am now, of just that progression of like, you made me feel this way versus I'm feeling this way. And that action you did affected me, and just coming at it from a much more mature place. But again, as we first kicked this off with, we don't get a class in how to navigate marriage in these conversations. And so I think it's so amazing that the two of you have taken this on as your life's work to support couples, to help them find this effective, meaningful communication that deepens their bond and probably helps them get to know this person that they've been living with at a whole new level. That just makes it so exciting. It's like, oh, how we're still discovering stuff about each other even after 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I absolutely want to ask about your book. Please share where they can find it, a little bit about it. I'm sure there's lots of people who would love to get a copy.
Yeah. So our book is Love Me Forever, Secrets to a Lifelong Partnership. Basically, this is a book Sophie and I published last year. It really is a book to, one, talk a little bit about what we talked about today of helping you with connection, but we found a way to basically create a lot of different stories through other relationship issues that people are working through. And so within the book, you'll find lots of examples about not just connection, but you'll have two couples that are experiencing a problem. We'll introduce the problem. We'll tell you what they did to resolve the problem, and then we'll explain it, and then we'll ask you questions about how it made you feel and can you relate to what's going on. So really, what we wanted to do was we wanted to give people examples of those that succeeded and those that failed, and then not just tell them why we believe they failed, but ask them what they believe about what happened, to really introduce the idea of all of our lives. One of the ways we connect is through story. And once Sophie and I we started writing this book as something else, we discovered that story was the way that connects all of us. Mm-hmm. And so we really wanted to create a book that would really help people kind of understand what's happening in their own relationship without calling it out, but kind of introducing it through different stories. And that's what this book is about.
So helpful. Yeah, having sort of like a third party introduce the topics and then you could talk about them with less charge, I think is such an effective way to move through things. So we will link it up below. So we'll make sure that, everyone can get a copy if they're interested. And I'm so glad that you have all this amazing work that you've put out into the world for couples, and it's going to support so many people. Before we wrap, I do want to make sure that people hear about your True Connection workbook, the free gift you brought along. So tell us a little bit about that.
So we created this workbook as kind of a tool to illuminate a lot of things within the facets of your relationship that people have either forgotten or don't know. Because as we talked about, like one of the challenges that none of us are really taught how to be in a relationship. Imagine if one of the very first like foundational classes you had to take in school was relationship 101. Imagine if a relationship was a part of every curriculum throughout life, because it's so important. It's one of the most important things to do, and it's one of the least taught things that we have in our lives. Yet we also know that people who are in healthy relationships live about 4 more years longer than those who are not in healthy relationships. And so there's a biological impact of not having a healthy relationship. And so our couples workbook is really just to take you through explaining some information about your relationship. We've also got a checklist in there and a couple exercises for people to do to really help them be intentional about bringing themselves back to a better place of connection.
Amazing. That's going to be so, so valuable. So everyone who's watching, if you are in a partnership, get the workbook. It's linked up right below the video. It's going to, really help you integrate everything that Sophie and Aaron shared with us today. And thank you both so much for making the time to have this conversation. I know it's going to be helpful to so many people listening.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.